World War II was a global conflict that engulfed nations from 1939 to 1945. It was a war unlike any other, marked by unprecedented brutality, technological advancements, and a scale of destruction never before witnessed. The war's origins can be traced back to the Treaty of Versailles, which ended World War I but sowed the seeds of future conflict. The treaty imposed harsh penalties on Germany, leading to economic instability and resentment that fueled the rise of Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party. Hitler's ambition to expand German territory and establish a new world order based on Nazi ideology plunged the world into chaos. The war began with Germany's invasion of Poland on September 1, 1939. Great Britain and France, bound by treaties to defend Poland, declared war on Germany 2 days later. The early months of the war were characterized by a period of relative inactivity known as the Phony War, during which both sides prepared for the inevitable clash of arms. However, the conflict soon escalated into a global struggle, drawing in nations from every continent. The Axis powers, led by Germany, Italy, and Japan, sought to reshape the world order according to their totalitarian ideologies. They aimed to conquer vast territories, subjugate entire populations, and establish their dominance over Europe and Asia. On the other side, the Allied powers, initially comprising Great Britain, France, and the British Commonwealth, fought to defend democracy, freedom, and the rule of law. As the war progressed, the Soviet Union and the United States joined the Allied cause, forming a formidable alliance that would ultimately triumph over the Axis powers. The year 1940 witnessed a dramatic turn of events that shook the Allied powers to their core. In a stunning display of military might, German forces unleashed their blitzkrieg, or lightning war strategy, overwhelming their opponents with speed, mobility, and overwhelming force. On May 10, 1940, Germany launched its invasion of France, bypassing the heavily fortified Maginot Line and driving deep into French territory. The French army, unprepared for the ferocity and speed of the German assault, crumbled under the onslaught. Despite valiant resistance from British and French troops, the German advance proved unstoppable. Paris fell to the Germans on June 14, 1940, and France was forced to sign an armistice on June 22nd. The fall of France, one of Europe's most powerful nations, sent shockwaves throughout the world. It marked a major turning point in the war, leaving Great Britain to stand alone against the Nazi juggernaut. With France out of the war, Germany turned its attention to Great Britain, launching a massive air offensive known as the Battle of Britain. The Luftwaffe, Germany's air force, aimed to cripple the Royal Air Force and pave the way for a seaborne invasion of Britain, codenamed Operation Sea Lion. From July to October 1940, the skies over southern England became a battleground as German and British pilots engaged in fierce dogfights. As the Battle of Britain raged, German bombers also targeted British cities, particularly London, in a brutal campaign of aerial bombardment known as the Blitz. Night after night, German bombers rained down explosives on civilian areas, causing widespread destruction and terror. The Blitz was intended to break the spirit of the British people and force them to surrender. Despite the relentless bombing, the British people displayed remarkable resilience and determination. Civilians sought shelter in underground stations and makeshift bomb shelters, enduring sleepless nights and the constant threat of death from above. The Blitz, far from breaking the British spirit, only strengthened their resolve to resist Nazi aggression. The year 1941 brought new challenges and a widening of the conflict with the entry of Japan and the United States into the war. Japan, an expansionist power in its own right, had been waging war against China since 1937. Seeking to secure its access to resources and establish dominance in Asia, Japan saw an opportunity to exploit the situation in Europe. On December 7, 1941, Japanese aircraft carriers launched a surprise attack on Pearl Harbor, the main US naval base in the Pacific. The attack, which killed over 2,400 Americans and sank or damaged numerous warships, shocked the American public and galvanized support for war. The following day, December 8, 1941, the United States declared war on Japan, officially entering World War II. The attack on Pearl Harbor was a pivotal moment in the war, bringing the United States, with its vast industrial and military might, into the conflict on the side of the Allies. It also marked the beginning of the Pacific War, a brutal struggle between Japan and the United States that would rage across the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean for the next 4 years. Section 5, Operation Barbarossa, the Eastern Front, ignites. In June 1941, Hitler broke the non-aggression pact he had signed with Stalin 2 years earlier and launched a massive invasion of the Soviet Union, codenamed Operation Barbarossa. The invasion, the largest military operation in history, caught the Soviets by surprise and initially achieved stunning success. German forces advanced rapidly into Soviet territory, capturing vast swathes of land and inflicting heavy casualties on the Red Army. However, the German advance was eventually slowed by fierce Soviet resistance, logistical difficulties, and the harsh Russian winter. The Battle of Moscow, which raged from October 1941 to January 1942, proved to be a major turning point in the war. The German army, exhausted, undersupplied, and unprepared for the brutal winter conditions, was halted at the gates of Moscow. The Soviet victory in the Battle of Moscow shattered the myth of German invincibility and marked the beginning of a long and costly war of attrition on the Eastern Front. Section 6. Turning the Tide. The significance of early battles. The early years of World War II were a time of great upheaval and uncertainty. The Axis powers, led by Germany's formidable military machine, achieved a series of stunning victories, conquering much of Europe and threatening to topple Great Britain. However, the tide began to turn in 1941 with the Soviet victory in the Battle of Moscow, the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, and the subsequent entry of the United States into the war. These events marked crucial turning points in the conflict, shifting the balance of power in favor of the Allies. The Soviet Union's vast manpower reserves, coupled with the industrial might of the United States, would eventually prove decisive in defeating the Axis powers. However, the road to victory would be long and arduous, paved with the blood and sacrifice of millions of soldiers and civilians. Section 7, Life on the Front Lines. Soldiers in the Crucible of War. For the millions of soldiers who fought in World War II, life on the front lines was a brutal and unforgiving experience. They faced unimaginable dangers, endured unimaginable hardships, and witnessed horrors that would forever scar their souls. Soldiers from all sides endured intense combat, often engaging in hand-to-hand fighting in trenches, forests, and ruined cities. They faced constant artillery bombardments, machine gun fire, and the ever-present threat of snipers. Disease, hunger, and exhaustion were constant companions, and medical care was often rudimentary or non-existent. The psychological toll of war was immense, with soldiers suffering from shell shock, post-traumatic stress disorder, and other psychological wounds. Section 8. The Home Front, Resilience and Sacrifice. The impact of World War II extended far beyond the battlefields, touching the lives of millions of civilians on the home front. As nations mobilized for total war, civilian populations were called upon to make unprecedented sacrifices. Rationing of food, clothing, and other essential goods became commonplace, and people endured long hours in factories and shipyards, producing the weapons and supplies needed for the war effort. Women played a vital role on the home front, taking on jobs traditionally held by men and keeping the economies of warring nations afloat. Children participated in scrap metal drives, planted victory gardens, and endured the separation and loss of loved ones fighting overseas. The war had a profound impact on social norms, gender roles, and family structures, leaving an indelible mark on societies around the world. Section 9. A World Transformed, the Legacy of the Early Years. The early years of World War II were a time of unprecedented violence, destruction, and loss. The conflict had a profound impact on the course of the 20th century, shaping the geopolitical landscape, accelerating technological advancements, and leaving an enduring legacy on the world. The war led to the deaths of an estimated 40 to 85 million people, the vast majority of whom were civilians. It resulted in the redrawing of national boundaries, the rise of the United States and the Soviet Union as superpowers, and the beginning of the Cold War. The horrors of the war also led to the creation of the United Nations, an international organization dedicated to maintaining peace and preventing future conflicts. The early years of World War II serve as a stark reminder of the human cost of conflict and the importance of diplomacy, cooperation, and understanding in a world still grappling with the legacies of war.